was forced to flee from Italy to Holland, where he lived for a number of years, in Amsterdam, where he wrote many of his most outstanding works, until he came to Eretz Israel, to Akko, at age about 38 or 39, and not long afterwards died in Israel from plague. And there are two traditions about where Romchal is buried. One of them, he's buried in the hills outside Tiberias, in what is now a suburb of Tiberia, in the hills there by the cave of Rabbi Akiva. And there is a large slab of built-up marble matzeva to Romchal there. There is another tradition that he was buried in near to Akko. In the location is a place called Kfar Yusuf, which is a Druze village, Druze town, not far from Akko today, where there is a patch of land that has Jewish gravestones, is known as the Jewish cemetery. I've been there, but I have not seen any matzeva to Romchal. And among the experts in the Kivrei Tzadikim Eretz Israel, there are those who consider that the true place where he's buried is in Tiberias. This makes sense because Romchal himself, and certainly his students, consider him to be the Gilgul, the incarnation of Rabbi Akiva, and they explain that he had to live for most of his life in Italy because just like Rabbi Akiva only came to the Torah at the age of 40, and he was Ben Gerim, who came from Italy, was the son of converts who came from Italy. It was necessary for the rectification of the soul of Rabbi Akiva that Romchal would be this outstanding Torah genius in Italy, and we see that when he came to Eretz Israel, very shortly afterwards, he left the world. For me, the discovery of this book by Romchal was the summit and the crown of my quest for the authentic Torah healing. Because whereas today we think about healing primarily as to do with the individual, particularly the physical body of the individual, and we do have the holistic healers and the spiritual healers, and that's what Torah healing is about. By and large, the subject of national healing and societal healing and cultural healing is perhaps so overwhelming that people don't even think about it, don't even think how to heal the world, because the task seems so overwhelming in the face of the tremendous forces for evil and for destruction that exist in the world today. And yet, Rabbi Nachman, it began to dawn upon me as I completed my study in the Wings of the Sun of what the Torah says about individual healing, spiritual and physical, began to dawn upon me that there has to be more to healing than that. There has to be the healing of the nation. There has to be the healing of the people, and there has to be the healing of the whole world. The Torah is not overwhelmed by the task. God is by no means overwhelmed by the task. It's almost like Houdini, who gets himself into impossible knots and tied up, and just to show that in the end he will have the power to actually do everything is promised, everything that the prophets say. And one of the conclusions I came to in the Wings of the Sun was that for the individual, the healing of the soul is not a matter of giving medicines. It's not a matter of a kind of chiropractic on the soul that somebody's going to get in there and do manipulations and the person is going to magically get better. Because the logic of the soul is not the same as the logic of the body. The logic of the spiritual world is not the same as the logic of the world of nature. The world of nature runs by natural law. Natural law, factor A causes factor B, influences factor B, which influences factor C in a historical progression, eventually bringing about such and such an effect. Now that is not the case in the world of the spirit. It's not the way we actually function as people. Sof ma'aseh v'machshava techila. Sof ma'aseh, the end of what you want to do, is actually in your mind, in your thought at the very outset. It is not something in the past which causes a person to do something. It's something in the future. It is a future goal, a future desire that impels a person to take steps of courses of action towards that goal. And the conclusion I came to in my study of Rabbi Nachman's teaching of personal healing is that if the person has a goal, is clear about his or her goal, that enables the person to get up and begin to work towards the goal. And that is really what healing is about, because that's what living is about. Living is about seeing your goal and working your way towards it. Well, now, when I discovered Romchal's book in the original Hebrew, in the years after completing The Wing to the Sun, it became clear to me that here we have the true goal of global healing, and the true goal of national healing, the true goal, the true end of the roadmap of the prophets, the true end and goal of the roadmap of the Tanakh. And that is our holy temple. My house is the house of prayer for all the peoples. That is the prophetic vision of the end of days, when the entire world will come to a state of harmony and perfection through the rebuilding of the temple in Yerushalayim. And it is a sign of the greatness of this task and this goal that it seems today to be so impossible and unthinkable and politically incorrect and all the rest of it. But God has made many miracles. God has turned around in 1917, in the space of 10 days, the whole world was shaken by the Soviet, the Russian Revolution. Back in the 1990s, I remember being astounded by how quickly this fortress of the Soviet Union fell apart after a few years of softening up within months. I saw it myself in Ukraine. We were traveling to Rabbi Nachman's grave in Uman in the late 1980s. We saw how the whole communist apparatus, which had seemed so formidable, so frightening, the KGB and everything, just fell apart and came into nothing. And so it could be also that the present world situation, which seems so fixed with so many forces all locked in the situation they are, could equally well, by some magnificent series of events, switch and shift completely, and it will do that through the power of our collective willingness as Jews to envisage the form and the shape of the future temple. And before I speak about Romchal's book, let me say a word about Ezekiel's vision of the third temple, because that is what Romchal's book is explaining. We find in the prophecy of Ezekiel, his earlier prophecies are all about the coming destruction of the first temple, and he was living in the and prophesying in the very last years before the destruction of King Solomon's temple. Ezekiel was a contemporary of Yirmiyahu. The two of them came after Yeshayahu, and they were both foreseeing the imminent destruction of Yerushalayim and the exile of the remaining tribes of Judah and Benjamin from Yerushalayim to Babel, which Yirmiyahu prophesied they were going to be there for 70 years. Yirmiyahu has some references to the coming temple, but very little. Most of Yirmiyahu is reproof and prophecy of the coming doom. The difference between Yirmiyahu and Yechezkel is Yechezkel divides into two halves. Yechezkel begins with a whole prophecy against Yerushalayim and the temple going up a good part of the book. Then he turns in the middle of the book to the prophecies of the doom of all the nations, one after the other, and he comes then to the haftarah that we read on Parashas Vayechi, when we read about not Vayechi, Vayigash, when we read about Judah stepping forward to Joseph. That same haftarah is the story of how Ezekiel had the prophecy to take the two sticks and join them together, the stick for Judah and the stick for Ephraim, as I was discussing last night, and bring them together, the restoration of the 10 tribes to under the Malchus Beth David. Then he comes to the valley of the dry bones in chapter 37, and the revival of the dead, the breathing of life into. In chapter 38, he comes to Melchemes Gog